Hi everyone, Barbara and Jacob from Qonic here. Welcome back to another Qonic release walkthrough. And this month is a proper mix. So what if your model already knew what was around it? Or what if measuring didn't mean switching between tools? Well, this month's release answers both, plus one feature many of you have been asking for. Okay, let's jump in. We've already shown you this a few times before, but from now on it's officially available. Until now, your model has always been placed on its own, without the world around it. And with world context, that changes. You can now stream the real world surroundings directly into Qonic, giving you the context you need while you design. I'll hand it over to Jacob to show you how it works.
Yeah, so Qonic now allows you to display the context around your project. You can find the button for this on the right-hand side. This button here, clicking it once, will display the survey point. That's an already existing feature, allowing you to place your project in a specific coordinate system with specific coordinates in this system. Clicking this button a second time will actually stream in 3D tiles from Google Maps using Cesium to be able to visualize the project in its context. You can also right-click this button to directly go to only the survey point or the survey point and the context. Now, since this survey point is linked to this location, changing the coordinates of the survey point will obviously also change the visualization of the context. So if I would say instead of 160,000 meters, it's actually 150,000 meters, you'll see that it appears somewhere else on the map. This also means if I were to manually modify the location of the survey point around my project, the context will also move with that. So they're linked together, the survey point and the context.
Okay, and when you split or slice geometry, the last thing you want is to lose the relationship between the pieces you just created. Now you can instantly turn those pieces into an assembly, keeping everything grouped and easier to manage. This was a feature requested by one of our users, so thanks for the suggestion, and we're excited to see it in Qonic.
Yeah, so the slice tool has been extended with an extra option to be able to keep your sliced geometry as an assembly. So let's say we want to slice this slab here. I'll use the slice command, shortcut S, and I'll slice, let's say, here, and using control, create a second slicing plane. Now, before I accept this, I now have the option to keep this as an assembly. So when I do this, I click OK. Looking at the properties of the slab now, it's still one slab, but I can now see in the structure it's a slab with 3 building element parts. And indeed, if I zoom in, I can see that there's indeed a slicing line here between this part, and this part as well. Using the control key modifier, I can choose to select the sub-entities of this slab here. So now these individual slabs can be assigned to different tasks in a planning, for example, or can be quantified individually. So a good way to slice your objects while still retaining their properties and their attributes as part of an assembly. Now we've also added this option to the split products command. So for example, let's say I take a look at this door here, for instance. Looking at the product structure of this door, it's just one single level assembly. It doesn't have any sub-assemblies or children or parent relations. It's just one single product. But I can actually see it consists of multiple bodies, multiple solids. So we can use a split products command for this if you want to split this up into a sort of assembly. So under assembly, we can now split products. And here as well, we now had added the option to keep this as an assembly. So doing this, the door itself will still retain all of its properties, all of its attributes, but we now can see that we have 8 individual building element parts, which I can now individually select. And for example, also start adding different materials to these different parts. So giving you a bit more flexibility on how to handle this kind of assembly.
Okay, next up is the measure tool. It's something most of you use every single day. So we've expanded it with a few capabilities. From now on, you can measure angles between edges and faces, as well as the distance between points. Let's take a look.
So the measure tool has been unified and extended with some extra functionality. So we can find the measure tool down here under measure. So what already existed was the ability to find out the shortest distance between two objects. So I can select, for instance, this wall and this staircase, showing me the shortest distance like this, as well as finding the shortest distance between sub-entities. So this would be things like faces and edges. So using the deep select command, I can find the shortest distance between, let's say, this face and this face, or maybe the shortest vertical distance, also with some visual feedback. That's nothing new, that already existed. What we added is now the option to measure angles. So by enabling this angle mode here, I can check out, let's say, the angle between this edge and this face here, showing me visually how this angle was measured. That's 40.55 degrees. This works on planar faces and linear edges. Can be a mix of both. So I can, let's say, find the distance, the angle between this face and this face, 40.55 degrees. We've also extended this measure tool with a points mode, allowing you to pick points and find the distance between them either in a straight line. So let's say from this point to, let's say, this point here, that's 1025 millimeters, or broken down in its XYZ coordinates. So clicking this will actually break this down in X, Y, and Z. And I can keep adding points, for example, the midpoint here. You can keep adding points and switch between straight or XYZ. In the straight mode, it also shows you the angle between the different points in your selection.
Thank you, Jacob. And well, not every improvement needs to be a headline feature. You can now copy any object directly to your clipboard from the right-click menu and paste it wherever you need it, making everyday editing just that little bit faster.
Yeah, so copy pasting from the clipboard is now available. I can simply select an object, right-click it, and click copy. This will now be saved to my clipboard, and I can just paste it somewhere else. Pretty straightforward, but quite useful as well. This will also enable in a future release to copy paste objects across models, so you can copy paste an object from one model to another using this clipboard feature. There's also some intelligence built in around, for example, insertion of specific types of component. Let's say I want to copy this door here and paste it in this wall. It's again just a matter of copy pasting like this, and the tool will be smart enough to automatically place the door at the correct location in the wall. Now, a feature that we showed last month was the option to find objects with the same geometry. So I can select the window and under select same, enable geometry to find all the objects with the exact same geometry as my current selection. That's nothing new. Actually, using this, this geometry recognition engine, we've built a new extra feature in the inspect panel using this structure tree here. So we can find, in this case, I have 194 windows selected, and they all consist of building element parts and plates. I can visually see what they are on screen when I hover over them. They're highlighted in black, so these different plates and building element parts. Now, we've now added the option to further split these different categories in similar geometry. So if I click this button here, it'll show me, in this case, 4 different types of plates across my selection. It's actually grouping together all the exact same pieces of geometry with this plate IFC class. So this could be useful, for example, if I want to select all of these types of plates across all of these windows. I can simply highlight them here and select them. Across all my windows, all these plates have the exact same geometry, to then maybe change the material to something else. So this can be used for all kinds of use cases where you want to find similar geometry. Maybe you've imported geometry from a tool where you don't have all the necessary BIM structure, and you just want to add some properties to a specific object with a specific shape. It can be very useful to find similar geometry that way. Now, this kind of workflow where you basically want to replace all kinds of windows with another version of this window, in an ideal world, you would actually do this using a concept of reusable families or components. And that's exactly what this next feature is about. It's actually let's call it the headline feature of this release, is the first version of our components framework. I will not go into too much detail here. I will actually create a separate video on these components to go in a bit more detail, but I do want to give you a bit of an idea of what it looks like. Basically, we've added this components panel here on the right hand side where you can store different component libraries, and in these libraries you can store different components. So for example, I have a furniture library where I can store and reuse objects. Let's say I want to add a bed here. I can simply drag and drop this bed in here. This also works for things like doors and windows. Again, using the same insertion logic, should be pretty straightforward to insert these kinds of objects into your model. It also comes with features like, for example, variants, creating variants of one object and then replacing objects with variants of that object. For example, a single bed versus double bed, and so on. So I will create a separate video on this in a bit more detail, so be sure to check that out as well.
Well, thank you, Jacob. Instead of rebuilding elements, you can now create them once, manage different variants, and reuse them everywhere you need them. Okay, and then last but not least, another improvement based on your feedback. The publish flow is now clearer. Changed elements are marked as edited and removed elements as binned, making it easier to review your updates before publishing.
Now, as one final adjustment that we made for this release, let me actually review and publish these changes. Heading to the dashboard, I can now see I made changes to both my architecture and my structural model. We've slightly changed the user interface of this dashboard to make it a bit more comprehensible for new users. So instead of having a personal bucket and a project bucket, we now have just one single bucket where all the modified objects or models are now indicated with this yellow edited tag. If I remove a model, it will be marked as binned. And we also slightly updated this publish button to make it a bit more clear, to make it stand out a bit more, so that you know as a user that something's going on. You need to publish your changes if you want to share it with the rest of the team. So nothing functionality-wise that changed here, basically just a user interface update.
Well, thank you, Jacob. That's August. Everything you've seen today is live and ready to try. So open a project, explore your model in real-time context, and check out the new inspect workflow, and then you can start building with components. And if components caught your attention, make sure to check back tomorrow for a full deep dive. Thanks for watching this month and keep sharing your ideas with us. We'll see you next month.